We arrived at Rollo's studio and he will be our guest on Own Your Future. I can't wait to share his story with you, so let's go say hi to him.
Hey, Natalie.
Hi, Ed!
Welcome.
Thank you so much for having us.
How are you?
Very, very good. How are you?
Good, thanks. Yeah. Welcome to my artistic studio here
Artistic
in Kuntung.
studio?
Yes.
I love it.
Let me show you my creative space here.
Okay. And this is where we'll be interviewing?
That's correct. Yeah, this is where I make music. This is where I develop my tutorials. Any kind of video content that I do happens in here. What do you think?
I love it. Looks so colorful and so dynamic.
Yeah.
Can't wait to know more about it.
I put a lot of work into developing this space, so
Okay.
yeah, I'm excited to show you today.
Oh my god, perfect. So let's have a seat. And hi, my name is Natalie Chan, and this is Own Your Future, a show all about helping young people uncover truths about life and work. Join me as I invite some of my favorite people to talk about what is it that they do, lessons they've learned, and how is it that they're taking charge of their own lives. Make sure you subscribe to Own Your Future's new episode every week, or join us for our live stream chat. Find us on YouTube and podcast. Now, it's time to own your future and start living a happy and fulfilled life. Okay, so everybody, this is Ed Rollo. Thank you so much for being on Own Your Future. Ed Rollo has a very fascinating story because he started studying computer science in university before he realized that it just wasn't really his thing. And then he went on to become a carpenter, and then he is now a filmmaker as well as a independent music artist. And he also started his own music school. So Ed, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me, Natalie.
And
Pleasure.
thank you for having us in your beautiful studio.
Awesome. Oh, you're most welcome.
So tell me a little bit more about your journey. Where did you grow up, and how did you decide to study computer science in the first place?
Sure. I grew up in Australia, in Sydney. I went to high school basically in my hometown of Balmain. And once I left high school, I eventually went to go to university because that was the thing to do. With a little bit of pressure from my father mostly, who's an engineer, does very well, but works for himself. So I went into computer science because it sort of seemed like a reputable career path. And we just got a computer at home. I was kind of getting into, Napster and downloading illegal music, as everyone was back then. And I just kind of thought that computer science goes along with mathematics. I was quite good at maths at school. So I decided to give it a go, and it turned out to be quite tough, quite hard, yeah. Not for me.
Not for you?
Yeah.
And how long before you know that it's not for you and then you dropped out?
It took me 2 years to figure that out. I spent the first year and a half failing a lot of subjects and not doing too well in others. And then I spent half a year going back and redoing all those subjects again and really giving it everything I had. And I did quite well. I actually got distinctions in things like discrete mathematics and systems engineering or something. Mm-hmm. And I did quite well, but I realized that it wasn't necessarily just down to me doing the work. It was also down to the teachers that I had too, and how much of an influence that had over me was amazing.
And why did you decide to drop out instead of maybe pursuing another major?
I actually ended up doing music as some of my electives in university, and I think the writing was just on the wall there. I just didn't want to face it. So I was, every chance that I had to do something outside of computer science, I would take that opportunity.
Much more excited to do the music class than it is the...
I know, yeah. It's the path we go, I guess,
So what was your thought process when you were leaving school? Like, how did you feel at the time, and what did your parents say?
My parents have always been very supportive, whatever I did. So it didn't really matter so much to them, although they were probably concerned that, I'd put in 2 years but not finished. It would have taken me another year and a half, I guess, of slogging it out, but I was really unhappy.
What did you do in order to start kind of your career?
I did some careers counselling, and for me that was not very helpful because I still didn't know what I was doing in life
Yeah.
and figuring myself out. And, you know, I think I'm about 10 years behind most people. I sort of, I'm starting to, you know, find my path a little bit. And it wasn't until after I'd been to university, I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I went to see a careers counsellor, like a proper professional one, paid a lot of money for it, did the whole Myers-Briggs test and all this stuff, which, you know, is worthwhile doing, but it was also a chance to really discover what industries I needed to be in and what industries I didn't need to be in. I didn't need to be, you know, working, you know, doing coding and all this kinds of stuff. I needed to be, essentially I needed to be outdoors, I needed to be doing things with my hands, I needed to be doing stuff, creating stuff was the biggest thing I got out of that. And that's what got me into doing carpentry afterwards.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Because, so you actually did a whole personality testing, assessment type of thing, and then you realized, wait, what did you find out from the test that you didn't already know about yourself?
I guess truths, you know, that a lot of people don't want to necessarily face, or they push those down because it's not the norms, or it's not what, like going into doing carpentry was a really, really hard move for me. Like just actually, I hate to say it, but like just doing a trade was really, really tough for me because I've sort of felt like it was a career path, and this is a really bad thing for me to say, but it was a career path that I felt that was an option for people who had no other options. And it wasn't until I really faced those truths that I was like, I love it. You know, it's a fantastic option for anybody to do, and I highly recommend doing a trade to anybody now. And, you know, I went through it, I got my ticket, and I loved it. I was good at it, and, you know, it was, I look back on like, you know, oh, I have to go to university, and you know, I can't just do a trade.
Yeah.
Doing a trade was amazing. Yeah.
Wow. And I think
incredible.
because also in a city like Hong Kong, like we never really get to make anything. I mean, like
Sure.
everything is like ready-made, like you buy it off the shelf, and then
Yeah.
like, and it's like you never really see the behind the process of how, you know, a table gets crafted, and like what is the behind the
Absolutely.
scenes of it.
Yeah, I mean, the construction world or trades here is on a completely other level,
Yeah.
and certainly different to what it was like for me back in Australia. But it's still an incredibly reputable path, I think. Yeah.
And I think what's fascinating is that when you did the personality test, because I think a lot of schools, like, you know, our audience out there as well, it's like, you know, everybody has done some sort of personality test, but a lot of times it's like, how do you actually translate that personality test into actual actionable items?
Sure.
Like actionable, trying different things out.
Totally,
So
yeah.
how, and I think a lot of students were like, yeah, I may know that I'm an extrovert or introvert, but then so what? And like they give you a few options for what you perhaps would proceed, but then it's like there's no way for you to plug in and try things.
Totally.
So I think that's kind of where it seems to be a disconnect in how schools may use these, education may use these different tools, but then there's no, what's the next step for it?
I think it definitely almost takes a third party, someone who's not invested in the individual's education, and to almost kind of go, okay, well, what are you really into? What do you really love doing?
Yeah.
What situations do you not love doing? What situations make you feel uncomfortable, trapped, you know, things like that. But someone who says, okay, well, if they're, you know, let's just put all the options out there. What's going to make you the most happy? Figure out a way to, you know, bring value to other people by doing that. You know, that's.
And so through your, how long did you do carpentry for?
Carpentry was a 3-year certificate.
Oh, wow.
It was supposed to be 4 years, but in the time that I was doing it, the government cut out that last year, which was supposed to be, so it was through 4 days on the job, and then 1 day at education, you know, certificate, tertiary education. I was a little bit older because I didn't go straight in from high school, and some people go in before they even finish high school because you can graduate at year 10, which is like 2 years before you finish high school in Australia. So yeah, it wasn't until I was 24, I think, that I was a fully qualified, or 23, yeah, qualified carpenter, moved out of home because I had a full-time job. You know,
and then what happened to carpentry? Because I know that you also proceeded to become a filmmaker and then in music. So how did it all, like, what is the sequence of everything, and how did it unfold?
It's a rapid change of direction for me. carpentry led to many different opportunities. You could go into doing alterations and extensions. You could do finer joinery work as well, which was really nice. And something that I ended up in doing was working in events and working at the Sydney Convention Centre and Exhibition Centre, and I actually applied for a job there working in the workshop to build stages and staging for events, and 'cause a lot of concerts would come through there, and I think we had Bear Grylls come through there from
Oh, I love Bear
Man vs.
Grylls.
Wild, yeah. So I mean that was one of the big claim to fames who came through the convention centre, and we had to develop the staging and things for his stage show. I didn't get the job, but I was really fascinated with the industry of just doing events and working in something like the convention centre, which is amazing. And so I called them back and said, look, I just love this industry. I'm curious. It sort of seems like it crosses into the music world in ways as well, with audio and visual and lighting and things. So they put me in the MX department, which is underneath the AV department, or audiovisual. But MX essentially means machinery or mechanical, I think is what the term is. And so we were building stages and putting up divisions and walls and setting up for events and setting up chairs and things. And it was donkey work. It was just, just needed some muscle to do these things. But I was surrounded by people who were in the industry. They were either musicians, or they were actors, or they were solo artists. They were people who wanted to be surrounded by just an atmosphere of creativity, and it was a way to get paid doing that. So it was a nice transition from there that kind of got me thinking about the greater scheme of things and learning about video and visuals and things. And it was when I was working there that I got quite obsessed with video. Yeah.
And then you just decided to start. How did you start learning about video then?
Honestly, it was for YouTube. I spent every waking minute on YouTube because I had seen the style of video that was coming out with DSLR camera shooters, which was your handheld basic camera and a kit lens or something. But there was a certain style that I was really obsessed with, and I was watching all these like videos of London on like South Bank markets of small focal lengths of people handheld filming like bookstores and croissant shops and things like that, where there was this real artistic flair to it, and you could put amazing color grades on it, and something about that just really took my interest, and I was like, that's what I want to shoot, exactly like that. So I went down this narrow path of not learning everything about video, but learning about that style of video. So I became a DSLR video shooter.
Wow.
I bought a camera. It was the Canon 7D with a 50mm lens. I managed to exchange the kit lens for a 50mm. I was like, I want the 50, I like the 50, the 1.4, you get this nice shallow depth of field. This is the style I want to do. And so I started making videos with this one lens.
Wow.
And then when I started getting paid for it professionally, which we can talk about, but the beginning of my career, like those first year, is all shot with one lens because it's all I had. So yeah, it was a little limiting, but people.
Can you share some of your projects there, and we can check out what that is?
Totally, yeah. I mean, actually, one of the first gigs that I did, which I was paid for, which was not until I first arrived in Hong Kong, was working for Red Bull. I mean, what a gig to land for someone who's just getting into video. I mean, this is just Hong Kong in a way too. It's such a small community of people doing these creative arts. That landing a gig for working for Red Bull, and it was an event that they were doing, and it was through my ex-girlfriend at the time, who was had a partnership with them, doing some creative artwork, and I had a camera, managed to get the gig, and made this, and I'm still really proud of that video. It looks great. It looks really great. I watched it the other day, and it's still something that, is a bit of a testament to,
It must be such a confidence boost too, like to
Oh,
just realize that, I
totally.
mean, to be learning things just on YouTube without getting professionally trained or like learn from someone like that. And
Yeah, absolutely.
like that's awesome.
And
Wow.
yeah, and it's just a snowball effect. Oh wow, hey, come over and do a video for me too, and you know, just like word of mouth spreads.
So how did you go from filmmaking into now becoming a music artist?
Yeah, so I guess music was always in the background through all my different career paths, but never treated it as a career path. Back in high school, I would spend every waking minute that I wasn't in school in the jam room, a room like this where there was a drum kit, and my mates would come in there and we'd just jam out on old like Tool and Korn and Pantera, all this like heavy metal stuff because we loved it back then. And we would just play, and I was obsessed. I was absolutely obsessed. When I first saw a drum kit, I was like, what is that? And I can't do it, and I need to figure this out. So I was like chopsticks on the dining table at home and like pots and pans, like total cliche.
Wow.
And I was just obsessed with it, that I couldn't get the basic rock beat that my music teacher showed me at school, Mr. Banks. And from there, I just, every waking minute was in the jam room. It was like a recess, it was at lunchtime, it was before school, it was after school. Any time that we had, I was in there. And, you know, if that was like it for me, I loved it so much. But how are you going to get paid jamming with your mates in a garage unless you make it to the big time? So it was an option. I did do some work experience in working in a studio. I actually got to work with the drummer from The Church, which is a pretty popular Australian rock band, and that was amazing here in this studio in Balmain. And I hung out with him for a while, and he sort of showed me the ins and outs and kind of what's involved with running a studio. And it seemed like a tough gig, it seemed pretty hard. It was long hours. It was surrounded by musicians, there's a lot of drugs, there's a lot of alcohol, there's a lot of things that are associated with this that as a young kid, you're kind of like a little bit intimidated by that stuff. And of course, it's not a good reflection on, like parents either, kind of going, you really want to be in a studio all day, just smoking cigarettes and eating pizza boxes until 6 a.m. in the morning kind of thing. And that was that's what it was though, kind of back then. The electronic music world and kind of where I am today was not really present very much back then. It was still there, it was starting up, but it wasn't very popular. And so I guess I'd always played in bands, I'd been performing out live, I played pretty much every live music venue in Sydney and got to tour, multiple times around Australia as well, playing with some amazing artists like one of my great mentors, Mitch Granger, who is now in LA and doing incredibly well over there, but started in the Sydney music scene, playing with people like Alex Lloyd, who did that song Amazing, which is like his massive hit, big in Australia.
Amazing.
But being surrounded by these guys, and we were gigging all the time. We played at the Basement, which was amazing, one of the most amazing live music venues in Sydney. We played at like the Opera Bar once a week. We had a residency at the Bridge, which is a really well-known venue there too. And we just played the circuit everywhere and had the opportunity to do some tours, which was amazing too, some recording sessions and things. So even still, I was getting maybe $100 for doing a gig, which is like, $100 US, maybe even less back then, for doing a gig, and that was maybe once a week if I was lucky. And that paid for a new cymbal, it paid for new drumsticks, it paid for new drum heads. Maybe I wanted to buy some other musical equipment, but it wasn't enough to pay the rent or anything like that too. So that was always going on. I just never treated it like a profession.
I see. So at what point did you realize that you can make it into a profession?
Probably when I arrived in Hong Kong, and I started a business with my business partner, Mike Vera, and we developed the Soul Passion Music, the DJ music production school. And I suppose that was the first time I really started treating it like a profession and trying to develop some sort of a business out of music or from music. Yeah. So not just toying with jamming and playing and, you know, occasional DJ gigs here and there, but actually developing a business out of it and a model that's proven to work around the world. Yeah.
Interesting.
So teaching other people how to do the stuff that I was doing for years and always doing is, you know, a great way to make some extra money out of, you know, what you love. Yeah.
That's fascinating. And then for, I mean, so now you are performing as a profession, and what kind of names have you been working with when it comes to performance?
Well, through Soul Passion, we had a great network of producers and a bit of a face for Hong Kong as well in terms of the place to go when artists were coming through here. It's always a struggle to kind of cross that gap from reaching out to an artist and, hey, I've got a school over here and everything, and you don't want to annoy any promoters and things like that. So it is a bit tricky to develop those relationships. But I mean, we had some amazing producers like Young Guru come through. Eric Lau, who's a Hong Kong guy, who's now working over in LA, I think, at the moment. We had Crackazat, who's just blowing up at the moment too. That was a connection through the Fufu guys, who, you know, an events team here, guys doing the Shifumi Festival. A bunch of other names. We had Mr. Bill come through here too. Through DJing in Hong Kong as well, I've had a chance to play with people like Booker Shade.
Wow.
Amazing, right? And we hung out with these guys after their set and we're sinking beers with them and just chilling. Like, it's incredible. One of my favorites was Breakbot from way back in the Sydney days, and when they asked me they knew that I was a fan at Volar Club, they knew I was a fan of Breakbot. They were just like, well, why don't you warm up for him? I mean, it's amazing, you know, his dream come true. And the guy comes up to me afterwards, gives me a big hug, and he's just like, great set, man. I was just like, thank you.
Oh, wow.
Cool, yeah, really cool.
So for students, I mean, like in Hong Kong, like music is a big part of, say, after school activities. I mean, like every student in Hong Kong has an instrument that they know how to play. But to actually think about how to convert that into a career is a very different mindset, right? So what are some of the learnings that you had from being an independent music artist?
Yeah, I suppose I've been giving myself that name now for about the past, you know, year and a half, after my long time at Soul Passion and you know, DJing a lot as well. There was always a bit of the two worlds going on, but now I'm starting to feel like I'm very much independent and that I'm working by myself to create my own reality. And, you know, I don't have a business that's backing me up. I have my own kind of what's in front of me to make the most of that. And it's a really tough battle, and I think really the only thing that gets you through it is that you absolutely love it and that there's nothing else that you would rather do. If you're kind of unsure, a bit wishy-washy kind of thing, then it may be just better for you to, you know, jam on the weekends with your mates and DJ occasionally here, you know, but if you really want to make it as an independent music artist, then you just have to love it. Yeah.
And how would you recommend students who are interested in music, for example, how would they start? Like, how can they get started?
I think we're in like a very fortunate digital age now, right, where we have all the technology at our fingertips. It's just about utilizing it the best way you can with the tools that you have in front of you. Obviously, we're in a beautiful studio here, and I put a lot of work into this, but I also, you know, worked my ass off to make this happen too. So this was a bit of a present to myself, was to create this distraction-free zone. Looks great on camera, you know, there's nice, you know, tools here that I've collected over the years, but, you know, just doing simple things with your phone and creating some sort of content is all you really need these days. We have amazing digital audio workstations like Ableton Live, which I use on a daily basis. You can get it very cheaply. All you need is a laptop and some headphones to really start making anything with that program. But I mean, just there's so many different facets to a music artist that, you know, whether you're a singer or you're a songwriter, you're a guitarist or a keyboardist or a musician, whatever you are, it's just making the best of your current situation, really. Yeah.
And how would you describe to our audience, like, what is an independent music artist?
Yeah, I mean, the term independent music artist is a little bit lame. It just means that you're not signed to any specific label. Self-releasing artist and monetizing ways personally, rather than having a record label or, you know, some sort of management behind you who's going to pay you to do what you do. So I would say that most people who are bedroom producers would be independent music artists. It just depends on how far you want to take that and how professional you want to treat it as well. Yeah, I tend to think now that I'm treating this very professionally. I'm not just kind of, although it's still hard to convince my parents, you know, that I'm just, you know, playing with some DJ toys and stuff. You know, I treat it very seriously. Yeah.
So would you mind sharing with us a project that you're working on and kind of breaking down the process
Absolutely.
behind that, or maybe even telling us a little bit about all the equipment that you have in front of us?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, let's get stuck into it.
Okay. So we're gonna go show this. If you can see, there's so many beautiful, colorful keypads here.
So, so I'll be using and performing on Ableton Live. So, Ableton Live is a DAW, so a digital audio workstation. So it sits there in the same league as things like Logic, or even things like GarageBand and Pro Tools. These are all digital audio workstations, and it's a means for creating and performing music electronically.
Okay.
We obviously have a few different pieces of gear here, so everything is feeding back into Ableton Live. And so this is a project which I used to actually, so I wrote this track first, and then I'm using the platform to perform it out live as well, using these various toys. So over here I have a drum machine. This drum machine is a collection of sounds from classic Rollo drum machines like the 808, the 909, 707. This is the TR8, which is the more recent model. So this gives me control over every different part of a drum kit, all my levels, and I can shape the sounds here as well. Also have some various effects, and I'm sending information from the computer to the drum machine, and then that feeds back into the computer. So we have this little kind of loop going on here where I'm sending data to it and then receiving the audio. So I'll just give you a little preview of how it sounds as well. So at the moment, I just have a kick and a hi-hat, and then I can bring these back in and adjust the sound. So very simple, but it just creates a nice solid backbone to everything else that I create from there on. I then have the Moog. This is the Mother 32. This is a beautiful semi-modular synthesizer. I've had this guy for about 2 years now, and I still feel like I'm only scratching the surface of its capabilities. It just sounds so nice that it doesn't really need much to it. I send also information to this. I send the notes from live to the synthesizer, and then the audio routes back into live, and that's where I can process the sound. So I generally put things like a little bit of reverb on there, maybe some delay and some effects. So let's have a listen to this guy.
Add that layer?
Yeah,
Okay.
and this is really just the most basic patch or sound that this can make, but it's just beautiful.
beautiful.
I love it. I love that so much.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm gonna have this until
And how
the
do you
day
make
I
those
die.
sound like? So you have to pre-record the sounds in order to string it into.
So this is an analog synthesizer. So it has basically a very basic oscillator in here, which produces the sound. We have a little bit of flexibility over that, but not much.
Yeah.
It's very, very bare bones, which is the beautiful thing about it. So you don't have thousands of presets that you can scroll through. It's got this kind of bass sound, and then you can manipulate that sound to create something new out of that, depending on how creative you want to get and how far you want to explore with patching different things around. But I send the information from the computer or from Ableton Live, and I send the notes that we're playing here.
Okay. Check those out.
Yeah, so then I can manipulate the sound here, but this is the brain that's sending the information to
okay.
it. Next we have Ableton Push over here. So this is also developed by Ableton, and this really just enhances your experience of using Live, the software. So this is a way that we can trigger different scenes. So in the project up here, I have kind of like a basic arrangement of like an intro and then a verse and then a chorus and a breakdown and a build up, and I can go through the different scenes of my track here and progressively work through it. So this is really fantastic because everything will just stay looping, and then I can kind of tweak stuff and then I can move on to the next scene. Yeah, so it's kind of a unique function or a unique part of Live is this ability to develop a session and develop scenes that you can scroll through. Yeah, it's one of my preferred methods for performing live at the moment. So
Okay. All I see is like very beautiful buttons.
cool. Well,
And then
let's,
each of these buttons means something.
yeah, so we can start from back at the intro here at the start. Just have basic sounds going, a little bit of percussion. I've got the drum machines running here. And then we can build up. Chords come in. And then I've got some more percussions about to start here. Yeah, slowly building. And then the main theme comes in.
Comment below if you like this soundtrack as well. But like. I love how you can just dance with your own work.
Have to, you have
It's
to.
amazing.
I always sit alone in this room
Yeah.
by myself, right? So I've got to create my own fun. Yeah, and so on.
Love
So
it.
I can progress through the track here, and essentially it sounds like a track happening on the fly, which it is.
Yep.
You know, there's a lot of work that goes into making sure that the performance goes smoothly. So yeah, this is just one step of kind of making sure that the track flows, and then taking all these toys out to the stage to perform it is the next stage. So, but we can do it all within the same piece of software, which is
Right.
just mind-blowing to me. It's amazing.
So then when you go to Bangkok and you're performing overseas, do you have to bring all this equipment with you, or do they have it over there? You just bring your laptop, or how does that work?
I have to submit my tech rider today, so this is something that comes up a lot with performing is what's your tech rider, your technical requirements, basically. So some of these toys are personal to me, and I'll have settings on them that are just mine, and so I'll take some of them myself, specifically the synth and probably the drum machine. Controllers like these are kind of a dime a dozen and could do with anything like that, but especially things like the sound card, like this guy is very, very crucial to my setup, and every one of these sound cards is going to be the same, but I also want to make sure that I'm in control of how my performance goes, and I can rely on someone else to provide me an instrument, maybe like a guitar or some drums or something if I want to use that in my performance. But things that are absolutely crucial to my performance, I'm going to bring them myself because I can't afford to have any kind of glitches. I know that this works. I've used it a million times before. I don't want to rely on someone else's gear, without being, too arrogant or whatever the right word is. I don't want to say something too bad, but I want to make sure that I'm in control of that situation, and it's my responsibility. If the show goes to shit, I can't kind of go, well, this is not my gear, man. It's up to me. It's my responsibility. So
I see. So what is, having been in the industry for some time now, what is a misconception about sort of the music industry for someone on the outsider who would not know now that you're in it? What are some insider tips that you can?
That it's easy.
It's easy, really?
Maybe, yeah. I mean, everyone these days has access to the same tools and the same, it's like kids in school these days, pretty much everyone has a laptop and a piece of software and some headphones. They can all produce this music and get out there and get known. And that's a harsh reality. A lot of people do. And it's tricky, and it's a hard thing to face for others or people like myself. I've been in this industry for 20 years now, and always still feel like I'm just getting started or just getting into it.
So how do you stand out if it's become so easy for everybody to join?
Yeah, it's very hard. I think with things like DJing, when people kind of cottoned on to how easy it is, everyone started DJing, and then there'll be the purists out there just like, oh, they're not real DJs. They're using a laptop.
What are they called? Like, what do they use differently? That's the pure. What is the pure part?
It's just a state of mind, I think, more than anything. They're not really doing anything different. It's people who have been in the industry for a very long time and feel like people who are just starting out, you haven't earned your keep yet, man. It's a very common thing that happens in the industry, and I think is one of the reasons why Mike and I developed Soul Passion Music, because it was like everyone can learn this stuff and it is obtainable to everyone. And why should these guys have all the secrets over here? It's the freedom of knowledge, I think, and it's important. And I mean, the industry is absolutely booming now, right? Because DJs are everywhere, music's being shared more, music's being more accessible now, and things like instruments and software, sample packs, everything is being available to everyone now to create more. Because we're in this kind of bubble of, like, it's new and it's cool and it's accessible to everybody, and
music festivals are popping up all over the world as
everywhere,
well. So how can someone with a dream to perform at a music festival? Is there a strategy to become one of those big music festival DJs, or how does that work?
It's probably not the path that I would encourage.
Why not?
I mean, I've been to, and I got to film a lot of big concerts and see what goes on behind the scenes at these concerts. And these are concerts where the big guys are playing, like the biggest people in the industry. I don't want to name anybody, but I've seen them all. I've seen them all backstage, and it's a show. It's a performance. It's choreographed. Hey, get up and do these 10 numbers and then get off stage and go to your next destination. I don't want to speak entirely for these people because I haven't done it myself, but I am a DJ. I know the work that goes into it, and you know, it's a material world, you know, of social media and following and going against the norms and being a little bit edgy and.
So ultimately, it's about building a brand around yourself.
Yeah,
building
absolutely.
a brand, you need to know how to market yourself. You need to know how to create content that supports either your music or who you want to be, and just have to build it up that way, right?
Absolutely.
There's no Is there any shortcut? Would you say?
Oh yeah, there's shortcuts for sure. I mean, the big controversial thing in the industry is ghost producing, which is the idea of someone else producing music for you, but you are just the face of it. So, hey, I'm this massive popular artist with 1,000, 100,000 followers on Instagram. Here's my latest track. Really? Is it your latest track? Because all I've seen you is on aeroplanes popping champagne and partying all day. When did you get in the studio and make that track? You know, so ghost producing is a real thing, and there's a lot of artists out there who are having music made for them just so they can go off and live that lifestyle of the EDM artist. You know?
Isn't that kind of traditional music industry, like where singers, they have ghost songwriters that give them the music? Is that not
true? Yeah, absolutely. There's a. I mean, I think it's a. What'd you say? It's a fine line between where you kind of.
Or you're an authentic artist where you're truly creating your own work versus getting someone. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it depends where you sit on that spectrum of what you know, like people like watching the Elton John story and having his guy in the background who writes all of his songs and his music for him, and Elton was just the show pony, but he was brilliant and he was amazing at what he did, and surely had a huge influence on the music as well.
Right.
It wasn't just So, there's different lines to it. I mean, I like to go down the road of, do as much as you can yourself and then get help where you need it. It is not the best thing to say that you need to do absolutely everything yourself. And especially as a producer, there's a lot of pressure on us to be performers, producers, engineers, singers, songwriters, mixing engineers, mastering engineers, like the list goes on, social media managers and everything.
Yeah.
So there comes a certain point where outsourcing is important.
Got it.
Your music and the core of what you do is like so fundamental, and everything else happens around that, I think. And so I think that if you replace that core fundamental with someone else's work, then personally I don't think I could go down that path.
It's more of a personal preference.
Yeah, totally.
How you want to be seen as an artist and what you stand for. Okay, so I think, Ed, thank you so much because you've shared such great insights about your world, about what you do. And this is a show called Own Your Future, and I only invite people that are owning their future.
Yes.
So I'd love to ask you for your last tip about how others can own their future too.
I think really, without sounding too cliche, really stay true to yourself and what you are most passionate about and what you want to share. Don't do things for other people. Do things for yourself, and just know that there's an audience for that, especially in the creative industry. If you're obsessed about any particular aspect, do it and get really, really good at it, and then figure out a way to monetize it, to bring value to other people. Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Cool.
Everyone, this is Ed Rollo here. He is an amazing inspiration. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you do, please like and subscribe and comment below. And Ed will be performing soon in Bangkok, so if you do want to check him out, go find him. Otherwise, how else can people find you?
You can always hit me up on Instagram at Mr. Ed Rollo, and my website, mredrollo.com. You can learn a little bit more about what I do.
Amazing. Ed, thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Natalie.